Next, let's produce and consume some messages to a topic that's inside of the opsclass tenant recengine namespace. We're going to use pulsar-perf to do that, as you saw in the previous video. So first, let me exec into that private cloud toolset pod where I can get access to pulsar-perf. Pulsar-perf is also inside of the bin folder. So I'm going to do a .bin/pulsar-perf. And I'm going to use the produce command. I'll produce at a rate of 1,000 messages a second. By default, under certain conditions, especially when you have higher publish rates, the client will end up batching your messages. So that means multiple messages will end up in each entry. When we look over at the Grafana dashboards, we're going to notice that the number of messages that shows up on the broker dashboard shows the number of messages regardless of if there's multiple messages per entry. Whereas the bookie dashboard is going to show the number of entries where there may be multiple messages per entry. So for now, we're going to leave batching enabled. We're going to produce messages at 1,000 messages a second. And we're going to look over on the Grafana dashboards and look at the number of entries that it says are coming in. So I'm going to produce at a rate of 1,000 messages a second. We're going to go to opsclass tenant, recengine, namespace, and source data topic. I'm going to start producing at 1,000 messages a second. So let's let this stabilize as it starts up, and we'll see the number of messages then in the Grafana dashboards. So now we can see that we've stabilized at around 1,000 messages a second. Let me go ahead over to Grafana. So here we are in our Grafana dashboards. Let me go first over to the broker dashboard. We go to broker metrics. You'll see that the publish rate is 1,000 messages a second. So in this case, the publish rate as messages is before anything gets batched. And I'll show you in a second why I know that. So 1,000 messages per second. Some of them may be batched into fewer entries than the number of messages. Let's go head over to Bookkeeper and we'll see how the stuff is actually getting batched. If I go over to my dashboards and I go to Bookie Metrics, I'm going to see that the entry rate is slightly less than 2,000. So we're publishing at 1,000 messages a second. If we suspect that there's no batching going on, we would actually expect an entry rate of 2,000 entries per second. And that's because we're going by default to write every single entry into 2 bookies. So you would expect 2,000 entries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn off pulsar-perf, turn it back on by disabling batching, or saying that there's 1 message per batch. And then we'll take a look at these statistics again on both the broker dashboard and the bookie dashboard. So here we are back in toolset. This is the command we use to produce messages using pulsar-perf. I've added in a new -bm1 or 1 message per batch, which essentially disables batching. Go ahead and execute that command and we'll let this start up again and produce 1,000 messages a second. Then we'll head back on over to the Grafana dashboards to look at the broker and bookie metrics. So here we're publishing messages at 1,000 messages a second consistently. Let's go ahead and hop over to Grafana. Here on the broker dashboard, after letting it run for a few minutes, you can see we're back to 1,000 messages a second here. Let's head on over to our bookie dashboard. And you can see that we've settled on 2,000 entries per second. So each entry now only has exactly 1 message because we set BM to 1. We're going to keep that way for all of our testing so we can consistently check and compare the number of messages versus the number of entries to make sure the bookkeeper is working okay. But in an actual production environment, you would definitely encourage your users in most use cases to enable batching. It makes it more efficient for the brokers and the bookies because you end up having fewer entries. They are larger because they each contain multiple messages, but it will be more efficient for storage and moving all the data around to have batching enabled.